Oh. Oh, hello. We're recording?
Hey.
Oh, it just said it's recording.
Oh, it did. Because it does that.
Oh, okay.
And also, yeah, I'm recording. But vamos a empezar. I'm going to start with our recording for tonight. Y muy buenas tardes, buenas tardes. Espero que ustedes estén bien. I hope you guys are all well. Espero que estén bien. Sí. Vamos a practicar muchísimo con el pasado. We're going to practice a lot with the past. And we're going to play around with some of these words that wind up being in imperfecto or always wind up being in the opposite, pretérito. Play around with a lot of those. Some listening, some speaking, some practice. So I'll probably send you out to smaller groups at some later point for some of that practice. Pero vamos a empezar con algo que es muy corto. Es una explicación corta. This is a short explanation of kind of a, I don't want to say a random thing, but this is one of these shorty things, and it's not connected to the past tense at all. But pero sí es útil. It's useful. Sometimes, and this kind of ties into the idea of some of those little words where you hear a word used and you say, why are they using it like that? And it's a short explanation of why. Y aquí ustedes ven las dos palabras. Here you see the two words, acá y aquí. And especially if you're in certain areas of Latin America, you will hear acá quite a bit more. But acá and aquí both have a translation of here. And why do sometimes people use aquí and why do sometimes people use acá? And she's got a little explanation because en Colombia, sí, ella es esta mujer se llama María, y en su país natal de Colombia, sí se dice mucho, se usa mucho el término acá.
Diferencia entre acá y aquí, en la vida real los usamos igual.
Oh, we use them the same. So in a lot of places, they will use them the same, although a lot of times I see this explained as acá is often used with verbs of motion, but you will see she will use aquí also with a verb of motion, but she's got a short explanation that will help. So the short answer is if you, there isn't a huge, enormous difference between aquí and acá. There is no way if you use one or the other that somebody will say, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Okay, but she's going to show kind of a customary difference.
Pero si quieres encontrarle un pelo al huevo, esta es la diferencia. Aquí se usa para hablar de un lugar específico cerca a la persona. Ven aquí. Aquí.
So aquí often for a specific spot. A specific spot. Here meaning this specific here.
Aquí. Y acá se usa para hablar de un lugar no tan específico, pero cerca a la persona. Ven acá, acá.
Acá. Acá es más como around here. So think of acá maybe as around here, yeah, instead of here, a specific like X marks the spot kind of area.
Entonces, aquí más específico, acá no tan específico.
Y eso es todo, and that's it. So a little primer on aquí, acá. Although some people will tell you, well, you know, the explanation I like to give people is that acá is used more with verbs of motion like venir and ir, although she used it with venir, you will notice. So, you know, even then, acá, around here, you know. Okay, bien. Fantástico. Segundo. I want to take a look at something from the video I asked you, one of the videos I asked you to watch. to see if you have any questions about, and I'm going to back it up a little bit so you can see both of these. Let's see if you have questions. ¿Recuerdan ustedes? You guys remember this particular little thing? This was harder than what we did with the little story of the little boy who sadly could not hold it before the mean teacher let her go to the restroom, yeah? Or the girl stuck in the ascensor, yeah? But this was a harder story. And she had, again, two choices, because you're not at a stage where I want you to try to create hicieron out of hacer, which is kind of a hard step. All right. But moving from this, where you had a choice of two verbs, to this, this where you got the answers. Did that pretty much make sense to you, or do you need a run through on what that kind of translates to mean?
I have a question.
Sí, Patricia.
The one that bothered me, or that I had harder time with, was the fue. It was like y fue verdad, because to me that's not an event, that's more of an idea.
Yeah.
Is
yeah.
that like when you say verdad, do we usually use preterite with that, or that's not what
That's a good question. And I hope for us to spend a little bit of time on that tonight. Although that's one of those areas. So we're going to take a look at this again so we can see what Patricia's question was about. Right down here towards the bottom. Why fue? So I'm going to do a quick rundown on what this meant, because as you can see, because we have both white and yellow, we've got a mix. And this is always the way it happens with telling a story or telling what went on in the past. People always wind up flipping between those two past tenses. It is very rare that you hear a story told only in imperfecto or only pretérito. Okay. And often when people learn pretérito and learn imperfecto, they get a story using all of that so that you get used to using that particular tense. But in reality, that's not the way a typical story goes. So last weekend, I went out to walk in the outskirts. I'm doing a translate up here. El fin de semana, primero en español. El fin de semana pasado salí a caminar en los alrededores de una laguna porque hacía buen tiempo. Había mucha gente pescando y otros hacían picnics. Mientras caminaba hacia la laguna, vi un par de venados en las colinas y también una serpiente negra se cruzó en el camino. La gente estaba nerviosa, pero un señor dijo que la dejara irse tranquila y no pasaría nada. Y fue la verdad. Nada malo ocurrió. Actually, I'll be able to tell you very exactly why that one fue verdad. Cuando finalmente llegué a la orilla de la laguna, vi muchos gansos disfrutando del agua y los polluelos, las crías, seguían a su mamá uno detrás del otro. Fue un paseo muy lindo. So she's talking about a walk in a park-like area, see? In a lake type area, see? So I'll start at the top. Last weekend, I went out to walk in the outskirts of Laguna, a lake area, because the weather was really good. And there, went out to walk is an event. It starts off the first happening of the little story, but it was nice weather is just a description. Había mucha gente pescando. There were a lot of people fishing. Again, I'm just painting the picture. There were a lot of people. Había is usually había. There were people people is not an event, like there was an accident or there was a fire or there was a fire drill. It's just there were people. So it's a description. Había mucha gente pescando y otros hacían picnics, and others were having picnics. So we're painting the scene, setting the scene for what it looked like if from the point of view of this person walking around, as if the person were making a little video, right? This is what the person sees as they're walking. And now we're still going to have the beginning of a description. Mientras caminaba hacia la laguna, while I was walking towards the Lake Laguna area, while I was walking, because that's what you mean, B, I saw. And actually B is no longer spelled with an accent mark, but it used to be years ago. So that's an excusable here. B used to need an accent mark when I first learned Spanish, and the academia said don't need it anymore. Vi un par de venados. I saw a pair of deer. And now, while I was walking, we've got an event. Ooh, I saw this thing. The fact that I saw this thing is an interrupting action in the middle of an ongoing event. That's what those two verbs say to the reader or the listener, whatever it is. Un par de venados en las colinas, a pair of deer in the hills. Y también una serpiente negra, and also a black snake. Se cruzó en el camino. And a black snake was crossing along the road, crossing the road. Okay. La gente estaba nerviosa. The people were nervous. Now, description. Yeah. Description, so imperfecto. Pero un señor dijo, but a man said, and said is one of those verbs that most of the time is going to be an event. Unless you mean an idea like, my grandma used to say would be decía, imperfecto. But generally when we said somebody said, that is now an interruption of somebody actually doing something that's an event. When somebody said something, it came out of their mouth and boom, it's an event. So a man said that, and the rest of that is in some things, different tenses, and said to that they should let it go ahead, that they should let it go away on its own in peace. You should let it go. Let it take off on its own, meaning the snake. No pasaría nada. Nothing would happen. It's a kind of a conditional tense that nothing would happen. Y fue la verdad. And wow, that was true. They're talking about the event. That one is fue verdad. It was true because we're really referring to a snake that crossed the road. And that snake that wiggled across the road, that was an event. And so the reaction to say, oh, that was true, nothing was going to happen, that snake doing that, is better described with fue. That question of should it be fue or era is a more difficult kind of thing. And people will, you take your cue from the way somebody describes it using fue or using era. Fue is kind of like I'm standing outside the situation looking into what was happening, and it's a reaction to that was an event. Era will be used if somebody means something as a flat out description. Fue verdad is really reacting to what the snake did and the fact that the snake didn't go attack somebody, grab him by the fangs. So it's pretérito, yeah. Nada malo ocurrió is tied up to that. It was true. Nothing happened. Nothing occurred, or we might say nothing happened more commonly. Nothing bad happened. And we're talking about again, ooh, okay, this happened, slither, slither, boom. Okay, that was a big nothing event. All worked up for nothing, those people. Okay, so both really reacting to an event. Cuando finalmente llegué a la orilla de la laguna, when I finally got to, and now that's clearly an event because I arrived at a place, pretérito, preterite. When I got to the shore, la orilla es the shore, vi muchos gansos, I saw many geese, ¿sí? Disfrutando, enjoying, disfrutando del agua, enjoying the water. Okay. Y los polluelos, las crías, so the baby birds. That's what they're referring to with polluelos or crías. Crías are little critters, right? The younglings, young ones. What do you call young geese? Gooselings?
Goslings, yeah, I guess.
Goslings. There you go. Y los polluelos seguían a su mamá. And now we're painting a picture. Oh, look at those little things marching behind. Seguían a su mamá, and they were following their mom, one behind the other. And that one behind the other is it paints an exact picture in your head of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah? All walking in line. It paints a picture. Fue un paseo muy lindo. It was a very pretty walk. And again, kind of like I'm looking back at the situation. Wow, that was a nice walk because it was peaceful and calm and a beautiful little event. But that question of whether you use fue or whether you use era can a little bit depend on the feeling the teller of the story wants to create for you. That one can be tougher. For you to create, whether you use fue or era, can be a lot tougher. All right. So I would say, don't get too worked up about that, but we are going to talk later about some key things that will kind of always be true. But when we talk about events, like you talk about, I want to describe a soccer game, what it was like, or I wanted to describe a concert, what it was like. People, when they want you to feel like, oh, I'm describing it and I want you to see it along with me, they'll use era. When they want to give you the impression of, now that I'm thinking back to what that concert was like, and they want to take a snapshot, they'll use fue. Fue and era is the hardest verb to use in pretérito or imperfecto. And the truth is, people will use either, but they're kind of creating a feeling with one or the other. So fue and era in pretérito or imperfecto is not exactly like saying ¿qué pasó? What happened? It doesn't follow the same kind of rules, if you will. So I would say, don't worry about the fue versus the era too much, except for the instances we'll talk about later tonight. Bien? Does that make sense a little bit better now?
Yeah, the only question I have is right in the very first sentence when they're using preterite, and it sounds like a description. Oh, I'm going for a walk, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I can see it being either
way. Yeah, he left.
Oh, going out for a walk?
Yeah, I was going out for a walk. And I saw this,
well,
this.
It can be. So I guess the thing, two things to think about with that. Salir often tends to be one of those things that is a real definite action, something that happened. I went out. I went out. So now, that being said, you do hear and read people using salía. I was going out. So, of course, that exists in imperfecto, but it paints a picture. So the second point about that, while salir is more of a definite movement, therefore kind of an event kind of verb, versus was is not an event kind of verb. That's tough to peg with one tense or another. Salir here, the person who's telling that story is going to specifically target one tense or another to give you a feel. And salí gives you a definite feel for off I went.
I wondered if maybe because the last sentence is also in preterite, the beginning and the end, here's the beginning of my story, blah, blah, blah. Here's
They're
the end.
bookends, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah, that is a good way to look at it. But the reason that even when I struggled to learn it, when I was very, very, very young, cuando era joven, the thing that I love about pretérito imperfecto is that I always take my cue from the tense the storyteller chooses to use.
Yeah, it's one thing to read the story and know what it means and to do it yourself.
Imperfecto paints description and flowing movement. Imperfecto, imperfecto does.
Mhm.
It tells you flowing movement and it paints a picture. And pretérito tells me boom, and now this, and now that. And so the speaker is going to give you that feel of the snapshot versus here are things just going on by choosing one. And people do choose one tense or another, but some verbs will lend themselves more to one tense or another, and you just kind of need to see lots of examples with it. But and some verbs, which we won't get into as much today, some verbs carry a very definite meaning with one tense or another, but I doubt that we are going to get to that topic yet today. Okay. A ver, ¿sí? Okay. Bien. Más preguntas. Any other questions on that little story she told? Or no? Nada. Okay. Bien. Vale, bueno, entonces, what I want to do first is to have you listen to yet another little story. Before we get to our practice. Our practice is going to be with dar en decir, but here is a little story. I'm trying to find the right tab. Perdón. Aquí está. Here it is. Okay. A ver. This is going to be a very contemporary. Did I give you the COVID story yet? I don't think I did. It's a COVID story. No? Bien. Okay. It's about a young gal who sadly got the bug, and she's going to talk about, and it illustrates very perfectly why we are going to slide between one tense.
Hola,
The subtitles.
¿qué tal? Bueno, primero de todo, quiero desearte un feliz año 2022.
Okay, so she got this during the big Omicron upsurge.
Ya sé que estamos a finales de enero, que ya llevamos un mes de año.
So she's doing this at the end of January.
Pero este es el primer vídeo de mi canal este año porque no he podido hacer vídeos antes.
And she's going to say, and she says there, I have not been able to make videos before antes, beforehand. Okay, so she says, I'm posting at the end of January and I haven't posted all month. And she's going to talk about the reason. This word motivo that you're going to hear her say, motivo looks like motive, and it kind of is, but we would translate this idea as the reason. The reason, and she's going to say the reason is that I have been sick in January.
Y el motivo es que en enero he estado enferma. Y por supuesto, como muchísimas personas en el mundo, he estado enferma con COVID. He tenido el coronavirus. Y en este vídeo quiero contarte cómo fue mi enfermedad.
And notice she uses fue, como fue mi enfermedad, how my illness was. And she's putting a period saying it's done by using fue. She is stepping out of the situation, not in the middle of the situation. She's saying it's over. I'm going to tell you what it was like. Okay.
¿Qué síntomas tuve?
Oh, wow. ¿Qué síntomas tuve? What symptoms I got. Notice that tener in pretérito does not mean had. Pretérito shifts tener out of the had idea and into the got idea.
¿Cuánto tiempo estuve enferma?
How long I was sick, and what she is implying to you by saying estuve enferma is that there's an end to this illness for her. Okay, there was an end, there was a definite end point.
¿Qué cosas hice para recuperarme?
What things I did to recover. Hice, I did. And she is putting them in little boxes saying, here are things I did.
Así que sí, todo empezó después de la Navidad.
And empezar is often used in pretérito, because when you say when it began, she is saying everything began after Christmas. Todo empezó después de la Navidad. Todo empezó, everything started, everything began. It all began. It all began. It all started.
En España, la Navidad dura hasta el día 6 de enero.
And Christmas lasts, L-A-S-T-S, lasts, dura, until the 6th of January. That is the Christmas season, from 24th to really 6th of January.
Que es el Día de Reyes, el Día de
Yeah, Three Kings Day. That's the end of Christmas season for them.
los Reyes Magos. Entonces, después del Día de Reyes, yo volví a mi piso.
Volví a mi piso. I returned to my apartment. Piso is used in Spain as apartment, apartamento. Volví a mi piso. I came back to my apartment.
Había estado con mi familia.
I had
pero
been with my family. Don't worry about the había estado.
Después de Reyes, volví a mi piso y me puse a trabajar.
Me puse comes from ponerse, meaning to start something. I know ponerse means to put on clothing, but it also means to start doing something. So me puse a trabajar means I started work. I started back at work. And she's saying that, well, okay, I came back to the apartment. I started back at work. Two events.
Como de costumbre.
As usual.
Y durante unos días yo noté que tenía un poco de dolor de garganta. Tenía mocos.
Okay. Let's back that up a little bit. Durante unos días, over a few days, yo noté, I noticed. And when you notice something, it's that first inkling. So she uses pretérito to say, ooh, this happened. I went all of a sudden, oh, I've got this thing. Noté que tenía un poco de dolor de garganta. And now she goes into description. I noticed that I had a little sore throat, un poco de dolor de garganta, a little sore throat. Tenía mocos, mocos is snots. Runny nose, goobers, mocos, okay? Tenía mocos, yeah. I had a snotty nose. I had a runny nose.
Tenía mocos,
Description.
pero no me sentía muy mal.
But I didn't feel that bad. But I wasn't feeling really bad.
Estaba quizá un poco cansada.
I was maybe a little tired.
Pero podía trabajar.
But I was able to work. I was able to work.
No estaba muy mal.
I wasn't really bad.
Y después de unos días empecé a sentirme peor.
And after a few days, I started to feel worse.
Y fue un viernes por la noche
And it was a Friday night that I started to do something else.
que empecé a sentir mucho frío.
Oh, I started to feel really cold. Mucho frío.
Tenía mucho frío.
But if you want to say I was cold, now that's in description world. Tenía mucho frío. Okay, we talked about those tener verbs in the past. Tener with imperfecto means I'm describing a physical condition in the past. Okay. Tenía mucho frío. I was really cold, and wow, I was super tired.
Y estaba súper cansada. Entonces me puse el termómetro para
Oh, I stuck a thermometer in my mouth. Yeah,
tomarme la temperatura
and that's an event.
y vi que tenía fiebre.
And I saw because I looked at the thermometer, que tenía fiebre, that I had a fever.
Tenía fiebre bastante alta.
I had a pretty high fever.
Y bueno, en ese momento yo pensaba, es imposible que yo tenga COVID.
And she says, oh, and at that moment, I was thinking, she doesn't say I thought, she expresses it as I was thinking. She's describing her mental process here. Wow, impossible that I've got this. That has to use a subjunctive. We'll come to that a different time.
No puedo tener COVID porque yo no he estado con otra gente.
I have not been with other people. This is impossible.
He estado trabajando sola en casa.
I've been working alone at home.
No he estado con amigos,
haven't been with
no he
friends.
estado en bares,
I haven't been in bars.
no he estado en restaurantes.
I haven't been in restaurants.
Y cuando había estado en tiendas comprando,
And when I had been in the store buying stuff,
siempre había llevado mi mascarilla.
and I had always been wearing my mask.
Entonces yo pensaba que era imposible que yo tuviera un virus.
And so I was thinking that, wow, well, this was impossible. And she's telling the story now all from, I'm telling you my story, and I'm in the middle of my story. And if I'm in the middle of my story, it's going to be a lot of imperfecto, because it's going to be imperfecto because I am describing to you how I was feeling through this process. Okay. So now she uses an era imposible, not fue imposible, to an event, because she's describing like everything, the feelings, the physical feelings, the mental stuff, everything, and era imposible. And tuvieras a past subjunctive, don't worry about that. That comes from tener also.
Pero pensé, tengo que asegurarme,
And now she expresses it not as pensaba, I was thinking, but pensé, I thought, meaning, oh, now I'm coming to a turning point. I thought it hit me. If it hits me, or if it hit me in the past, it's pensé. If it's I was thinking, it's pensaba. So she flips back and forth between pensaba, I'm in the middle of describing, to pensé. Ooh, I suddenly thought I ought to do this. And pensé is going to introduce another event in the past here.
asegurarme porque mis síntomas son muy similares a los síntomas de la gripe o del coronavirus.
And gripe is flu. So, I'm thinking, wow, I better make sure of what I've got, because my symptoms are like the flu or maybe COVID. I don't know.
Entonces yo me hice un test de antígenos.
Me hice un test. I gave myself a test. I did a test to myself. Me hice. Okay.
Que son los test que venden en las farmacias
Oh, those tests they sell in the
para
pharmacies.
detectar el coronavirus. cualquier persona puede hacerse
Any person can take this test.
un test de antígenos en casa. Entonces me hice el test de antígenos y rápidamente dio positivo.
And now you see a gave word, dio. Then I gave myself an antigen test and quickly it turned up a positive. It turned up positive.
Era un positivo muy claro y entonces yo pues pensé, tengo que cancelar mi trabajo para los próximos días porque necesito darme un poco de tiempo para superar el virus.
I need to give myself some time to get over this. Superar is to overcome, to get over.
Y entonces yo decidí cancelar el trabajo.
Oh, I decided to cancel, and there it's a definite. Oop, I made a decision. It's a pretérito.
Y me fui a dormir.
And I went off. I just went to bed. Me fui a dormir. I took off to sleep. I just flopped in bed.
Antes de dormir, me tomé un sobre de paracetamol.
Ah, I want to stop this for the paracetamol. Antes de dormir, me tomé un sobre. Sobre is an envelope. Paracetamol is kind of like our equivalent of Tylenol. Okay. And when you go to Europe in particular, they will not call a pain reliever as Tylenol, as we so often do. They'll use this pharmaceutical term of paracetamol. Me tomé un sobre. I took, well, and a lot of times when you go to a farmacia I know in Spain, I think in other parts of Europe as well, it's more like going to a kind pharmacist who will pat you on the back and tell you every single thing you need to do. And they will basically take good care of you and figure out what kind of medicine you should be taking, almost as if you were going to a doctor when you go into a pharmacy in Europe. And the pain reliever came in a little envelope, okay, instead of in a hard pill, apparently. So me tomé, I gave it to myself. Yeah, I took it.
El paracetamol es un medicamento que muchas personas toman para los síntomas de la gripe, como el dolor de cabeza, la fiebre. Y bueno, yo tomé un paracetamol y me fui a la cama.
And I took off to bed.
Y dormí durante muchas horas.
And I slept for many hours. Okay, she puts an end to it, many hours.
Y por la mañana, cuando me levanté,
and in the morning when I got up, now here's another little event moving the story forward.
Ya no tenía fiebre.
I no longer had a fever, but that no longer had a fever is really a description of your physical well-being.
Así que pienso que no tenía fiebre.
So I thought, well, I haven't got a fever.
Porque me tomé el paracetamol.
I didn't have a fever because I took a pain reliever.
Por la noche.
At night.
Y aunque no tenía fiebre, sí que estaba muy cansada.
And although I had taken the pain reliever, I was still really tired.
No me encontraba bien.
No me encontraba bien. I did not find myself well. Encontrarse is often used to talk about your health. Me encuentro bien means I am well. I find myself well. How do you find yourself? That sounds very 19th century, like something out of, I don't know, a Jane Eyre novel. I find myself rather ill today. Yeah, but they use encontrarse bien or encontrarse mal quite frequently in Spanish. No me encontraba bien. Well, yeah, I really wasn't feeling that great. No me encontraba bien.
No tenía ninguna energía.
I had no energy whatsoever.
Y durante todo ese fin de semana estuve en la cama.
Oh, but she uses estuve en la cama. I was in the bed the whole weekend. She wants to put an end to it. I was in bed for the weekend. Okay. So she chooses to say, just that weekend, I laid in bed.
Estuve durmiendo mucho, dormía por la mañana.
And now, but she switches from estuve durmiendo. I was sleeping a lot, but she's putting an end like, well, weekend. That's it, folks. You know, it had a beginning and then it ended at the end of the weekend. But then she's saying, I was sleeping in the morning. So now she's switching over into description. Dormía. So you got to take your cue from how her choosing to flip the dormía says, now I want to describe what I was doing, because in English we would just flip to I was sleeping.
Por la tarde,
I
por
was-
la noche, dormía todo el día.
I was sleeping all day.
El lunes ya me sentía un poco mejor.
Monday, I was feeling a little better.
Pensaba que el martes podría volver a trabajar.
And I was thinking, wow, Tuesday, I could go back to work.
Entonces, el martes estuve trabajando todo el día.
Tuesday, I was working all day, but she wants to tell you this has happened on Tuesday. I was working all day, just that day, Tuesday.
Pero el martes por la noche
But Tuesday night,
empecé a sentirme muy mal otra vez.
but wait, at night, situation changed. I started to feel bad again.
Y me sentí mal toda la noche.
I felt bad all night. She wants to put a beginning and an end. She's talking about that one night, Tuesday night.
Y después, el miércoles por la mañana, me sentía muy, muy mal.
And wow, Wednesday, I was feeling lousy. Now she's going into description again. And now she's going to say what her next thing that she decided to do.
Así que decidí tomarme el resto de la semana sin trabajar.
And I decided to take off the rest of the week without working, to rest.
Para descansar, y estuve descansando, tomando medicinas también, tomando ibuprofeno para poder recuperarme. Así que estuve descansando desde el miércoles hasta el domingo.
And notice she's got pretérito here because she puts a beginning, miércoles, and then an endpoint, domingo.
Y el domingo yo ya me sentía mucho mejor.
And I was feeling a lot better on Sunday. So me sentía.
Estaba totalmente recuperada.
Wow, yeah, I felt completely recovered.
No tenía fiebre,
I had no
no
fever.
estaba
I wasn't
cansada,
tired.
no me dolía la cabeza
My head didn't
y
hurt.
ya estaba lista para trabajar, para
And I was ready to work. All descriptive kind of things.
empezar a trabajar de nuevo. Así que en total he estado enferma más o menos una semana. Y esta semana ya estoy de vuelta en el trabajo, estoy muy contenta de sentirme mejor y eso es todo.
And that's it. So it's a little story just for telling her experience, but you have to take your cue from the words that people choose, the tense that someone chooses to tell their story in. They're going to tell you if it's beginning or end, or if it's a rolling set of events. Bien? Sí, Jan.
Poner in the preterite and imperfect. What? Put? I don't. Yeah, or does it?
Hey,
say-
¿por qué?
Yeah, right. What? I put.
Yeah.
I did put. I-
Okay.
yeah.
We'll
I-
take a couple of things on poner. Is that's the big question, Jan, for you right now?
Yeah,
Poner?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and the preterite and imperfect, it's still. I have to take it so slow because I can talk myself from one thing to
Right.
another. I could
Yes.
make a description into an action.
Well, and
You know?
that is kind of a normal reaction, I will tell you. It gets better when you decide to let it roll and say, oh, what they told me was boom. And like rolling down a hillside and letting yourself roll.
Yeah,
You take what they give you. And yeah, but okay, poner. Primero, poner. Imperfecto, muy fácil, porque muy normal, muy regular. Poner is going to be very, very regular in imperfecto, because remember, in imperfecto, we only have 3 verbs in the whole language that are irregular, you know, ser turning into era, ir turning into iba, and ver turning into veía, which really isn't that irregular. It's just that we keep the e from the ver, ve, we keep the e. But poner is one of those verbs that has a super ridiculous, crazy, gotta memorize it, irregular for preterito. And the reason we have avoided preterito, except to give you those regular charts, is that preterito is a very hard tense because it has many, many, many irregulars, and you just have to know which ones they are, and they're very odd. And they will switch out all kinds of, like, the irregulars don't make sense. It's not like saying, oh, it's a stem changing verb and it's irregular. It's weird because different letters like pop in out of nowhere. So poner en pretérito is puse, and that sure doesn't look like poner. The N goes away. Wow. Well, you've still got a mos to kind of help you out there, yeah? Pusiste, uy, momento. Puso and pusieron. That is very, very, you would never know that poner, P-O-N-E-R, turns into those things for pretérito. It is really, really, really weird. Okay, so there's hurdle number 1, but there's not one hurdle, there are 2.
Yeah, what does it mean? I mean,
Yeah. Poner by itself generally means to put, right? To place. To say, oh, puse la taza allá. I put the cup over there. Puse la taza allá. I placed it down over there. Yeah. But sometimes we have this thing called ponerse. Uh-oh. And ponerse can mean many things. Depende. Ponerse can mean to put on, like clothes, jewelry, perfume, maybe even, or sunscreen, or putting anything on your body, on your person. Okay. Ponerse can mean that, but ponerse also sometimes is paired up with other things. Sometimes ponerse, if it is paired up with an adjective, and I don't know how to get a plus, so a ver. Okay, it's not going to let me go into that mode. It totally disappeared. Okay, ponerse plus an adjective means to get a certain way. Like, okay, un ejemplo. Me puse enojada, which means a boom event. I got mad. Me puse enojada. Me puse enojada. Or like, me puse roja. I blushed. Literally, I turned red, which in that case is blood flowing to your face, not being angry, but being flushed. Blushed. Okay. Bien. Also, ponerse can do this terrible morphing thing. Me puse a trabajar. I think that's the way she phrased it. And there, ponerse with an a, notice it gets an a, means I started to work. It's like saying this. Empecé a trabajar. It's like an equivalent to that. I started. But me puse gives it more of a, I don't know, a rolling start, perhaps. So ponerse is kind of a nasty thing she threw in there, but that is what people do because it is a verb they use quite frequently in Spanish to say, well, I kicked off doing my work. Me puse a trabajar. Kind of like that. Yeah. It's an odd use of poner, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sí. Es un uso, un uso raro al angloparlante. To an English speaker, it is an odd use. To a Spanish speaker, it is a very normal use of ponerse. Bien. Okay. Más preguntas? More questions about that or no? And don't let those little things, because that's one little blip. The me puse a is a blip. Most of that you can get the general idea of how the events roll around with a little bit of help. But she does speak pretty slowly. I'll give that to you guys to listen to again, and do put the closed captions on. I really recommend you listen to that story yet another time, and probably a third time. And if you get to a ponerse and you think, wow, that one doesn't make too much sense, let that go by, let that flow by, and go for the other big ideas. If you can connect together 60 or 70% of the events and the descriptions, you're doing great. But a lot of times people will flip back and forth between talking about the present and then say, oh, and by the way, this happened the other week or whenever. And we flip between tenses constantly in English. And we don't have any idea of, well, I may be confusing somebody who doesn't speak English. We just do it because it's a natural thing. So to them, yeah, it's very natural. Bien? Okay. So what I'm telling you is there will be some discomfort, but
It's not painless. Is
you
that
gotta
what you're
tuck,
trying
yeah,
to tell
you
us?
gotta tuck into rolling position and just roll down the hill and go with it. Roll down the hill, become the snowball that builds up layers and becomes a big, and get most of those big ideas, collect those big ideas as you roll down the hill, and let that happen and let it wash over you. And don't try to make yourself translate every single idea. Go for the big picture. Always go for the big picture, and go for the picture of tenía fiebre, me sentía mejor, me sentía muy mal. Go for the, described, it happened in to event. Me hice un test. And wow, she used the word test. They borrow sometimes some English words for some of these things. Me hice un test de antígeno, an antigen test. So listen to that more than one time. Ayuda mucho. It will help a lot. Okay. A ver. Let's take a look at a couple of verbs that, what were some verbs that were generally used more in imperfecto? And I told you, you're going to hear these way more in imperfecto than you will in pretérito. What were some of the verbs we
Tener.
talked about last time?
Tener.
Tener is a big one.
Tener is a big one, a lot in imperfecto. You'll hear it way more in imperfecto. What else? ¿Qué más?
Querer.
Querer, a lot, because what I wanted is an emotional thing. And generally that gets into that descriptive mode. Yeah, sí. Tener, querer, ¿qué más?
Sentir.
Sentir, a lot, frequently. A lot of times you are going to hear more of that era for ser. I know that question of fue or era is kind of a problem with ser, but you'll hear era a lot. Cuando era niña, when I was a kid. Cuando era niño, when he was a kid. You'll hear era a lot, but no hard and fast rule for that. But we're going to talk today about two verbs that you're going to hear more. It's the flip side, the opposite side. You're going to hear these more in pretérito. and less in imperfecto. It doesn't mean you can't use it in imperfecto, but you'll hear it more in pretérito, the opposite of what we did last time. So let's take a little look at that. Bien, a ver, okay, we're going to create another little box. Because sadly, these are verbs that are used a lot. These are some of those verbs that are, wow, we use these a lot in our everyday conversations. Ooh, dar, which means to give, right? And decir, which means to say, to tell, right? It might mean either one of those. It depends. And so essentially by using these, we're going to be saying gave or said or told with that one. Okay, bien. Now, really, when you're saying I gave something, most of the time, if I wanted to slap a percentage on it, it'd probably be 80% of the time. I gave it. You're usually talking about an event. You might on occasion say, well, I was giving lunch to the kids. Okay. Was giving is going to be imperfecto. So yeah, you might hear it as daba or dábamos, but you know, you won't hear dar in this imperfecto as much. It exists. People do use it, but you'll hear it less in that tense because usually the idea of that gave is you know, it's got a clear beginning and ending usually. And sadly, dar, you would think it's going to use, oh, it's an AR verb. It's going to use these. Yeah, it's going to use these endings.
No.
No.
But it does not. It does not. Dar is one of the stinky, nasty, irregular verbs in Spanish. And there's no reason for it having these forms, but these are the pretérito forms. And we're going to use dar way more in pretérito than we use it in imperfecto. And there they are. And they've got yo endings. They look like they're an ER-IR verb, and dar is sure not an ER-IR verb. It's an AR verb, but these are the forms for dar, pretérito. Di, I gave. Dimos, we gave. Diste, you gave. Dio, he gave or she gave, or usted, you gave. Dieron, ellos, ellas, ustedes, you guys gave or they gave. All right. And you're going to hear dar way more as pretérito because quite often it's a one and done kind of event. That's just the way it comes out. Similarly, decir, another verb that starts with the same letter of the alphabet. Sí, comienza con la letra D. It starts with that letter D. You might hear decía, decíamos, decías. If, yeah, decía, Papa siempre decía, Dad always used to say. But most of the time, in general conversation with Joe Schmo across the street, you're usually going to say he said, she said, we said, and it's going to be a one and done kind of event. And sadly, decir is not going to follow any of the rules about regular ER-IR verbs. For pretérito muy irregular, dije, what the heck? But that is what it does. Dijimos, right? Sí, dijiste. Okay, I'm going to show you the dirty little trick with this. We just add an is to the end of dijiste to get the vosotros form, but you don't really need the vosotros form. So we're not going to focus on that. Dijo and dijeron. Wow. And that dijeron is even weirder because it does not get an ieron. It gets just ERON because this J has a dot. That's the way I used to remember it as a kid. Why is it not ieron like the other ones are ieron? Because it's got a J and a J has a dot like an I has a dot. So
Well, but
that's what That's how I
Doesn't-
remembered
It
that.
doesn't fit the other three words. that
Yeah,
have-
it's not
AI.
dijeron. It's not. Oh, I'm going to show you what it is not, because the pattern that my brain wanted to do for this was that, because hieron is, well, comieron, vivieron, escribieron. Yeah, but no, when you've got another letter that has a dot, that I goes bye-bye. So that's what I used to
I
tell
like that.
myself to get to that form. And once I did that, I never got it wrong again. Well, there we go. Dijeron. Okay. But those, you got to agree, are very odd, very weird, extremely irregular things. And these two verbs are perfect examples of how nasty and hard to memorize preterite tense is for English speakers. Really, for people who are going from French to Spanish, same way. They're like, wow, this is weird. They are weird, weird, weird forms. Okay.
It can't be easy for Spanish speakers either.
Well, but it
It's
is
so
because they hear it
goofy.
all the time.
Well, I suppose.
So why do we go from see to saw? Why do we go from is to was? Yeah. There are equally odd things in English. We just don't think they're odd because we've always heard it that way. And they don't think it's odd because they've always heard it that way. Eso es. That is what it is. So, okay. A ver. That is what it is. But when you think about it, the actual fact is that most of the time, you know, when we are talking about this event of gave, it's going to be something that is expressed with pretérito, because it just makes more sense as being something that is over with. Yeah. See, bien. Okay. I am going to give you a little time to work in smaller groups and see if you can figure out the following sentences. You're going to see these. You don't need to copy them down. They're going to come into your breakout rooms. Okay. And we're going to ask you to translate 5 little ideas, and they're short sentences, except maybe for 4. Okay. I gave him, we gave you, he gave me. And you know, you're going to notice you're going to have gave him, gave you, get, because that is how we really say it all the time. And well, that's how they're going to say it all the time. So I'm going to give you a little bit of help. I'm going to give you a little bit of help by telling you what these little pronouns will become. Okay, because your poor brains are doing multiple things at one time. So I'm going to give you what the pronoun will have to change into. So you don't have to think as hard about that, because that's not the part I want you to think hard about. What I want you to think hard about is what I do with that verb to say that event is over with. So wherever you see an underlining is where I'm giving you a part of that sentence, so you don't have to bust a gut thinking about it. Because really, yeah, that would be a normal reaction. I want you to focus on the gave, not on the him, you, me, them, us part. Okay? Vale? Bien? You're going to see that when you go into breakout rooms. I'm only going to give you about 5 minutes to do this, and then we'll come back and see how well you did. And these are all dar. They're nothing but dar, but pretérito, gave, not giving right now, but gave. ¿Entienden? Understand? See?
Okay.
¿Vale? Ok. Bien. Vamos a ver. I'm going to create about 3 rooms for you so that you're in 3s. Okay, you're paired up with some folks. You've got, 2 heads, and 3 heads are better than 1. And after you all hit your join button, I'll be able to send this screen into you.
Okay.
Ok. ¿Muy difícil o más o menos difícil?
Más o menos.
Más o menos. Ok. Okay, vamos. We're going to have everybody coming back in a minute. En un minuto.
Marilyn, ¿cómo se dice package? La
Oh.
caja? Can you say la caja or is that more box?
Caja es box.
Okay.
You're getting across the general idea with that.
Okay.
Paquete is a package. But caja, somebody would know. Well, a package is a box often, isn't it?
Paquete, is it L or la? And how do you spell that?
Paquete. Paquete. I will get it. I will type it out for you.
Thank you.
Van a ver.
Gotta look at it.
You will see it. You will see it. Yeah.
Some of the
Paquete.
words.
Yeah, paquete is not too awful, but yeah, it's
It's like a packet.
Yeah.
yeah, eso es. Sí,
Exactly
sí,
right.
eso es.
Mhm.
Eso es. Bien. Okay.
Oh, that's right. We can't see.
Yeah, you will see it in a minute. Van a ver en un minuto. Okay.
Do they ever call a package a box, a cajo, or is a cajo
Caja?
like
Una
Caja.
caja.
caja?
We have that question already, and they may. Quizás, maybe, yeah. Okay. So all of these are forms of dar that we're using in the past, right? See, and my short answer on that thing of como se dice package, if the closest you can come to is caja box, that gets across a similar idea. It's close. It's good. Call it good. Okay. Bien.
Sí.
Como se dice, I gave him, and now the le is going to have to go in a different place in the sentence, right? But I give him, ¿cómo se dice?
Yo le di
Yo le
25
di.
dólares.
And remember, most people will drop that word yo, but le di 25 dólares.
Mhm.
Le di 25 dólares. Most people will not bother to say that word yo, but of course, can you say it? Yes, you can. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Yes, you can. Le di 25 dólares. We gave you the phone number.
Mhm. Te dimos el número de teléfono.
Exacto.
Okay.
Te dimos el número de teléfono. Some people may just leave it as el número, but número de teléfono is a little more exact. Okay. Fantástico. And you are going to hear eventually this word paquete. Paquete. P-A-Q-U-E-T-E. Paquete. Se escribe paquete. He gave me.
Él me dio.
Él me dio.
El paquete.
El paquete.
¿Dio?
Él me dio. Él me dio. Él me dio el paquete. Eso es. A ver, bueno. When did you give them the money? Ooh, when? We need a when word.
¿Cuándo les diste el dinero?
¿Cuándo les diste el dinero?
Sí.
¿Cuándo a ver. I have the hardest time with punctuation when I switch keyboards. My punctuation goes all over the place. ¿Cuándo les diste el dinero? Bien. Okay. Diste. See, they didn't give us anything. And you're going to wind up saying they didn't give us nothing.
Oh, ellos no nos dieron nada.
Eso es, sí. Ellos no nos dieron nada. Didn't anything winds up having to be a double negative. No nos dieron nada. You could say nada nos dieron, but that would sound almost kind of poetic. We could take nada and put it front, but most people won't say it that way. They'll say it as ellos no nos dieron nada. No nos dieron nada. No nos dieron nada. Okay, vale, bien. Does that make sense? Was that one really super hard or?
No.
No. No.
You don't know. No?
No, es bueno.
Bueno, okay. A ver, bien. Vale, but that verb dar is going to generally, in a past idea, it's because it's an event that happens kind of quickly, it's going to wind up being something really, it's almost got to be pretérito in most situations. A ver, and I'm changing one thing around just a little bit here. Okay. Bien, momentito. Unos toques. I'm putting on just a few little touches here. I'm again trying to give you some pronouns so that you're focusing not on the pronouns for round 2, but you're focusing on the verbs instead. Y aquí. Here we go. Everybody can see my screen with the dije, all the oddball things. ¿Sí? Bien. Vale. Bueno. Decir. Here are the oddball weird things with pretérito with decir. Dije, dijimos, dijiste, and I'm sorry it capitalizes on me here all over the place when I switch to a new line. Dijo, dijeron, dijeron. Okay, I said dije, dijimos, we said dijiste, you said dijo, he said, she said, or usted, you said, dijeron, they said, or dijeron, you guys said. Okay, a ver. And we have one, we have one tricky little thing in here. So I don't want you to focus on the pronouns. I'm going to give you what the pronouns are, so you don't have to think as hard about it. I want you to focus on the told, said, all those words. Yeah, we want you to focus on those past ideas. And when you get into your Zoom rooms, you're going to do the same thing. 5 minutos, 5 minutes. Bien, okay. We've got one sneaky little thing, the idea of what from last week. So if you hit your join button, yeah, we got one sneaky little thing from last week that's going to wiggle its way into one of those. And Muy
Hey,
bien.
Marilyn, when we had a minute left, all the questions disappeared.
Oh, no. Okay. Bye.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we
Gracias.
only got two.
Thank you for telling me that
Yeah.
because that I did not know that is what happens. Because it's still, it's still showing it as a share on my screen. So good thing you told me that, Susana. I would not know.
Yeah. I think I
Okay.
remember this happening one other time or another time, but
Yeah, I was just trying to make my little prompt screen go away, but I still had it. Actually, I've got two things that tell me it's still sharing. So I'm sorry
Well,
it
we
went
don't know
away
that.
there.
yeah.
Perdón. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Vale. Let's see if you can get the basic ideas here. We told her. Oh, perdón. Now
Oh.
I do need to put it on share again. Aquí. So that you can see as we're following along. We told her everything.
Le dijimos todo.
Todos,
Le dijimos todo. Todo just means everything.
not todos. No.
No.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you were
Todos
right.
means all if I have a plural thing.
Okay.
But if I
Ah.
mean everything, like todos los niños, todos, all of them,
Okay.
right? Todo is just everything, and it's just always todo.
Okay. Marilyn, question. If you wanted to make it more specifically, we told her, could you put ella somewhere?
You
Either
can
at the
put an
beginning
ella.
or at the
Qué
end?
buena pregunta. What a good question. You can
ellas?
put an ella somewhere, and that's where it will go. It will be the caboose hanging off the back.
Ah, okay.
Le
Okay.
dijimos todo a ella, or le dijimos a ella todo. You could put it after the verb.
Okay.
to be.
But you wouldn't put it at the beginning of the
No.
sentence. Okay.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, why couldn't you put that?
Okay.
Could do either.
Maybe.
No.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, so if I phrase it like that, a ella le dijimos todo, it would be kind of like saying in English, but listen to what I do with my voice. Oh, we told her everything. It would be kind of like raising my intonation on certain words.
So more emphasis
Oh, we
on,
told her everything.
huh, okay, okay.
Not,
So it's better at the end.
not
The
them.
caboose.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of the meaning there. Most of the time, it's going to be hanging out somewhere at the back. So yes, you can tag it on because outside of context, with no previous part of a conversation, you don't really know if le means him or her.
Mhm.
That's the way that word operates, and it is weird that way. Bien. Número 7. I told you everything that I know.
Te dije.
Te
Te
dije
dije
todo
todo
que
lo que yo sé.
Te
I don't-
dije todo
Lo que yo
lo
sé.
que
It is lo que.
lo
Lo
que
que yo
sé.
sé.
Lo que sé, lo que yo sé, sí.
Okay.
Sí, eso es. And notice, we've got a lo que. Todo lo que yo sé.
Okay, I'm confused because I thought it would be just K. Because you're saying I told you if you were to put in that everything or
Yeah.
substituted that.
Oh, todo lo que sé. You could leave off this word.
No, I'm talking about the low part, Marilyn.
Oh, the low
Why
part
it's
here?
low K, not K. Just
Yeah,
plain
why couldn't
okay
It'll
without
be
the
lo
accent.
que because it's that what I know
I know.
idea. Yeah,
Thing
that one's
that-
kind of a curveball. Didn't mean to throw you a
thing-
curveball, but I kind of did.
I'm never gonna get low
Kind of
K.
did throw you a curveball. Now, yeah, but don't worry about that too much. Yeah. But here, I
Is
want
that
you to
just-
think definitely about a what that's not a question what that we saw last week. Did you tell him?
Le diste
Le
lo que sé.
Le
dijiste,
dijiste,
Stay.
Okay.
lo
Okay.
que
Significa?
significa. There are a couple ways you can express this idea. It can be, le dijiste lo que significa is great. Sí, es fantástico. Le diste lo que significa, or instead of significa, quiere decir.
Or this-
Quiere decir translates as means.
Oh,
Means, yeah. Those two words, significa or the phrase quiere decir, translate to means.
mm.
Okay. The
Oh,
important part I want you to get is the le dijiste. Did you tell him? Le dijiste.
Mhm. I looked on Spanish Stick and it gave me a choice of either low K with no accent, significa, or without the low, K with an accent, significa.
Todo que quiere decir. Yeah, okay. Sí, puede. It can. You could. But lo que, I think maybe a little bit. I personally like that a little better, but yeah,
Yeah,
Spanish dick. I don't
Okay.
know.
well, you know, they, whatever.
And there are a couple things you might use for the he was coming part on this next one.
Mm,
There are a couple things you might use. Yeah.
mm.
Hay posibilidades. There are a couple of possibilities. Uy, a ver.
Yeah.
He told me.
Él me dijo
Él me dijo
Okay.
que
Hey, veneer.
que, he
él va a
was
venir,
coming.
but it was coming. So
Was coming.
Yeah, there are a couple ways you might express this was coming thing. You might say venía, or what I would prefer, right? Que iba a venir. Que iba a venir. I like that one better. Que iba a venir, because that iba a venir conveys conveys that idea of he was coming. He was going to come. It was going to come. And I'm going to send you a little video to work on for next week about that point.
but yeah,
About that
going
point.
to come is not in, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just stupid. You got the past. and you got the-
Yeah.
Whatever.
So,
All right.
either one of those work. Either one of those work. Okay.
So you wouldn't say venido. Iba or
No, no,
estaba venido.
No.
Mm.
No. Venido is past participle. You can't use that with estar. With that, that wouldn't make any sense. That would confuse somebody. You're thinking of
Viniendo.
viniendo, which is a really odd, irregular thing. Que
Right.
no, estaba viniendo. No, nobody would know. No, not unless it was a real no. Yeah, I don't think you're going to hear that. Okay, they told us. Ellos
Nos dijeron.
nos dijeron
Las noticias.
las noticias.
Okay.
Las noticias. Ellos nos dijeron las noticias. There you go. Ellos nos dijeron las noticias. Perfecto. So what I want you to get a feel for are all of these forms, which are very, very odd. And to get a feel for if somebody's telling you a story and they're saying he said, she said, it's going to be dije, dijiste, dijo, dijeron, right? Dijimos, it's going to be one of those. Most of the time, like 80% of the time, even 90% of the time, you're going to hear people using decir in the past with these odd things with the J sounds, the h sounds. That's the way it's going to come out. So dar and decir are not like tener, are not like ser going into era, are not like querer going into quería. Dar and decir are very often go into that other camp because said and gave are more event-oriented kind of actions. Sometimes that's just the way that works out. Okay? I'm going to give you guys a different story unrelated, but something with a lot of past in it to do a little more listening practice for the week. And I'm going to give you also a little video that's going to talk about this idea of when we use ir with imperfecto, the idea of somebody was going to do something. Oh, but did they do it or not? That is maybe another question. A lot of times we want to say, well, I was going to go to the store. Well, he was going to come back at 5. What's going on? Right? Somebody was going to do something. And a lot of times ir goes into pretérito, preterite, when it talks about, a definite. He went at 6, he went at 5, but he was going to is going to flip into imperfecto. So we're going to talk about that. And I'll send you a little slide set about it, so you've got some frame of reference before you listen to the video.
Okay.
So that you've got something to think about and kind of compare it to. And we'll do some practice on that. And I hope we'll get to the fue and era thing a little bit more. Bien? Vale?
Sí.
Bastante bien? Pretty good?
Sí.
Okay.
Bueno.
So I want to give you things to hang on to, scaffolding to hold on to when you hear people tell these stories. For you to be able to spontaneously use it right now is going to feel really, really tough. So if you feel like, wow, at this time I should feel like it should just be falling off my tongue, it probably isn't. But we're doing this realistically, it's just not, because there are too many odd, irregular forms. But for you to hear somebody saying something and to recognize, oh, dijo, or any variation of that is going to be he said, somebody said something. We want you to recognize the forms you're likely to hear somebody say when they're telling you a story in the past, telling you what happened. We want you to recognize what you're likely to hear people using. Bien?
Sí.
Perfecto. Perfecto. Okay. We'll give you some more practice for the coming week. Y nos vemos. Nos vemos el miércoles. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Sí.
Sí, bien.
Adiós. Gracias.